Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening. And I'm going to give you a thought for the day from Seth Speaks. He's teaching Jane Roberts, the author of the book. He's channeling through her the eternal validity of the soul. And so today he's been talking about death and life and all kinds of things about the soul, about the body, etc. So we're going to kind of pick up in the middle. In your present situation, you arbitrarily consider yourselves to be dependent upon one given physical image. You identify yourself with your body. As mentioned earlier, all through your lifetime, portions of that body die. And the body that you have now does not contain one particle of physical matter that it had, say, 10 years ago. Your body is completely different now than it was 10 years ago. The body that you had 10 years ago, my dears, is dead. Yet obviously you do not feel that you are dead. And you are quite able to read this book with the eyes that are composed of completely new matter. The pupils, the identical pupils that you have now, did not exist 10 years ago, and that there seems to be no great gap in your vision. This process, you see, continues so smoothly that you are not aware of it. The pulses mentioned earlier are so short in duration that your consciousness skips over them merrily, yet your physical perception cannot seem to bridge the gap when the longer rhythm of pulsation occurs. And so this is the time that you perceive as death. What you want to know, therefore, is what happens when your consciousness is directed away from physical reality, and when momentarily it seems to have no image to wear. Quite practically speaking, there is no one answer, for each of you is an individual. Generally speaking, of course, there is an answer that will serve to cover main issues of this experience, but the kinds of death have much to do with the experience that consciousness undergoes. Also involved is the development of the consciousness itself and its overall characteristic method of handling experience. The ideas that you have involving the nature of reality will strongly color your experiences, for you will interpret those experiences in the light of your beliefs, even as you now interpret daily life according to your ideas of what is possible or not possible. Your consciousness may withdraw from your body slowly or quickly, according to many variables. In many cases of senility, for example, the strongly organized portions of personality have already left the body, and they're meeting the new circumstances. The fear of death itself can cause such a psychological panic that out of a sense of self-preservation and defense, you lower your consciousness so that you are in a state of coma, and you may take some time to recover. A belief in hellfires can cause you to hallucinate Hades conditions. A belief in a stereotyped heaven can result in a hallucination of heavenly conditions. You always form your own reality according to your ideas and expectations. This is the nature of consciousness in whatever reality it finds itself. Such hallucinations, I assure you, are temporary. Consciousness must use its abilities. The boredom and stagnation of a stereotyped heaven will not for long content the striving consciousness. There are teachers to explain the conditions and circumstances. You are not left alone, therefore, lost in mazes of hallucination. You may or may not realize immediately that you are dead in physical terms. You will find yourself in another form, an image that will appear physical to you to a large degree, as long as you do not try to manipulate within the physical system with it. Then the differences between it and the physical body will become obvious. If you firmly believe that your consciousness is a product of your physical body, then you may attempt to cling to it. There is an order of personalities, an honorary guard, so to speak, who are ever ready to lend assistance and aid, however. Now, this honorary guard is made up of people, in your terms, both living and dead. Those who are living in your system of reality perform these activities in an out-of-body experience while the physical body sleeps. They are familiar with the projection of consciousness, with the sensations involved, and they help orient those who will not be returning to the physical body. These people are particularly helpful because they're still involved with physical reality, and they have a more immediate understanding of the feelings and emotions involved at your end. Such persons may or may not have a memory of their nightly activities out of the body, experiences with projection of consciousness, and knowledge of the mobility of consciousness are therefore very helpful as preparations for death. You can experience the after-death environment beforehand, so to speak, and learn the conditions that will be encountered. This is not, incidentally, necessarily any kind of somber endeavor, nor are the after-death environments somber at all. To the contrary, they are generally far more intense and joyful than the reality you now know. You will simply be learning to operate in a new environment in which different laws apply, and the laws are far less limiting than the physical ones with which you now operate. In other words, you must learn to understand and use new freedoms. Even these experiences will vary, however, and even this state is a state of becoming. For many will continue into other physical lives. Some will exist and develop their abilities in different systems of reality altogether, and so for a time will remain in this intermediary state. Now, for those of you who are lazy, I can offer no hope. Death will not bring you an eternal resting place. You may rest, if this is your wish, for a while. Not only must you use your abilities after death, however, but you must face up to yourself for those that you did not use during your previous existence. Those of you who had faith in life after death will find it much easier to accustom yourself to the new conditions. Those of you who do not have such faith may gain it in a different way, by following through in the exercises I will give later in this book, for these will enable you to extend your perceptions to these other layers of reality if you are persistent, expectant, and determined. Now, consciousness as you know it is used to these brief gaps of physical non-existence mentioned earlier. Longer gaps disorient it to varying degrees, but these are not unusual. When the physical body sleeps, consciousness often leaves the physical system for fairly long periods, in your terms. But because the consciousness is not in the normally physically awake state, it's not aware of these gaps and is relatively unconcerned. If consciousness vacated the body for the same amount of time from a normally physically awake state, it would consider itself dead, for it could not rationalize the gap of dimension and experience. Therefore, in the sleep state, each of you have undergone, to some degree, the same kind of absence of consciousness from physical reality that you experience during death. In these cases, you return to the body, but you've passed over the threshold into these other existences many times. So it will not be as unfamiliar to you as you may now suppose. Dream recall experiments and other mental disciplines to be mentioned later will make these points quite clear for those of you who embark upon the suggested exercises. Now, you may or may not be greeted by friends or relatives immediately following death. This is a personal matter, as always. Overall, you may be far more interested in people that you have known in past lives than those close to you in the present one, for example. Your true feeling toward relatives who are also dead will be known to you and to them. There's no hypocrisy. You do not pretend to love a parent who did little to earn your respect or love. Telepathy operates without distortion in this after-death period, so you must deal with a true relationship that existed between yourself and all the relatives and friends who await you. You may find that someone you considered merely an enemy actually deserved your love and respect, for example, and then you will treat him accordingly. Your own motives will be crystal clear. You will react to this clearness, however, in your own way, and you will not be automatically wise if you were not wise before. But neither will there be a way to hide from your own feelings, emotions, or motives. Whether or not you accept inferior motives in yourself or learn from them is still up to you. The opportunities for growth and development are very rich, however, and the learning methods at your disposal, very effective. You examine the fabric of the existence you have left, and you learn to understand how your experiences were the result of your own thoughts and emotions, and how these affected others. Until this examination is through, you are not yet aware of the larger portion of your own identity. When you realize the significance and meaning of the life you have just left, then you are ready for conscious knowledge of your other experiences. You become aware then of an expanded awareness. What you are begins to include what you have been in other lives. And you begin to make plans for your next physical existence, if you decide on one, that is. You can instead enter another level of reality and then return to physical existence if you choose. So, as you go through your life, again, think about who else have you been. I always teach my students, it's really a good idea to prepare for death like you're going to die tomorrow or next week. Review all of your relationships. What have you learned? Study your life. How have you evolved and grown? In what ways have you changed? Like Seth says, not one particle of yourself is still part of your body. And make a great day.